Thank you. Yeah, I know. I don't know what this is. Is the fire on the head? This is all the way south.
You having people sign these or something?
Yeah, they're going to sign. These are going to the delegation, the New Hampshire delegation. So it's one for each of them. But people will have to sort of pull them up.
The wind is going to blow it the way the wind's going to blow it. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Olivia Zink. I'm the Executive Director of Open Democracy. And welcome and thank you all so much for being here. And also thank you to so many of you that collected signatures in your communities to pass these municipal warrant articles. Open Democracy was founded by Granny D, who walked across the country 20 years ago for campaign finance reform. And she reminds all of us that we have the power to change the laws that we see need to be changed. And that citizens really can transform the politics and the policies that we want. So we need a government back to we the people. And so today we join to celebrate the victory to get big money out of politics. And I want to invite town meeting leader in Newmarket and prime sponsor of House Bill 504, Ellen Reed, to join us for some remarks.
Woo! Hello, thank you. I literally just wrote this down maybe 30 minutes ago, but my name is Ellen Reed, and I started this as a college student and a bus driver who felt kind of spread too thin on too many issues. I cared about healthcare, climate change, everything, and I decided I had to focus on just one thing. And the one thing I decided to focus on was how corrupt our system had gotten, because that was the one thing that was preventing forward progress on every other issue. We can't see things on climate change or gun control or healthcare because corporations and special interests have bought out the system. So many of you know, in 2010, the Supreme Court advanced on a precedent that they had had for a number of decades, and in fact maybe 100 years or so, that corporations were people, with the Citizens United decision. And they decided that money was the same thing as speech. Now this was one of the most wildly unpopular decisions that they had made. And there started a movement across the country of towns stating that they were vehemently opposed to this decision and demanding that a constitutional amendment be passed to clarify, not to change the Constitution in our eyes, but to simply clarify what we believe was actually the intent of the founders, that money is not speech. And so in 2012, just 2 years later, the town of Bradford here in New Hampshire passed a local resolution, a warrant article, and then the next year the town of Conway, same. This started a New Hampshire movement of towns passing local warrant articles. The following year, 2014, Newmarket, my town that I live in, was one of the very first towns to join that movement. I know this because I was the one that went to the town council meetings to demand this change. Now, it went something like this. All through December and in January, I kept saying that we need to put this on the agenda, and I was being told by our town administrator that it would be on the agenda, and I would show up for that meeting, and then they would knock it off of the agenda and just say nothing. So in February, early February of 2014, I used the public comment period of our town council meeting to say, what the hell? Why am I getting the runaround? Why doesn't anyone want to deal with this very, very important issue? And because I kind of put the screws to our town council, some of the councilors decided to go ahead and take this issue up, and it eventually passed unanimously in Newmarket. And in that year, 69 towns. At the end of that year, we had 69 towns pass this, about 1/3 of all the towns in New Hampshire. Now, you cannot name another issue on which 1/3 of the towns in New Hampshire have demanded this body to act. And just to be clear, these resolutions are demanding our state representatives to do something about this, to make a statement saying New Hampshire is against money being considered the same thing as free speech in elections. New Hampshire is against corporations being considered people for the purpose of constitutional rights. It's pretty simple stuff. stuff that we all learned in 3rd grade and how our government is supposed to work. So in 2014, around the time we got up to that 69 town mark, some of the reps were in fact listening to us, and a bill did come through in the state legislature to request that Congress act on passing an amendment to overturn Citizens United. Now, in that year, that bill passed both chambers, both the House and the Senate, and it died in a committee of conference. The following year, now this is before I was elected, still a bus driver, the following year, I took it upon myself to write language that would hopefully overcome the barrier that we had with the committee of conference. And I got a number of bipartisan sponsors. In fact, the prime sponsor was Republican. And we got 2 different bills introduced that year, one in the House and one in the Senate. The one in the Senate passed the Senate unanimously, came to the House, passed the House. Somebody asked for a reconsideration, and upon the reconsideration vote, the voting machines malfunctioned, and it ultimately failed by 1 vote. So, I was elected in 2016, and in 2017 I co-sponsored this, it failed. I sponsored it in 2018, it failed, and then I sponsored it again here in 2019, and that is HB 504, which has passed both chambers. Now, thank you. Now, as you may be aware, our governor, Sununu, has vetoed HB 504, and in his veto, he lists 2 reasons. The first reason is his concern for the freedom of speech. I just want to say, if money is speech, then poverty is silence. This goes against everything the founders founded our country to be, the very meaning of our country. It means that if money is speech, only the wealthy are supposed to have a voice then. That is not what the United States is supposed to be about. And then the governor also said that it's not our job as the state legislature to make our congressional delegation listen to the voices of the people. And to him, I would say it is our job to represent the people. And if the people come to us saying that their voices are not being heard in our supposed republic, that it is our job to make a statement demanding Congress listen to them. Thank you. It is our job to stand up for democracy. It is our job to stand up for the people. And so what I would also like to say to the governor is that technically, if you look at the Constitution that he says he's so concerned about, we don't need you. It turns out the executive branch has no place, no job whatsoever in passing a constitutional amendment. So it really doesn't matter what the governor's opinion on this is then. So, now my bill did call for a public hearing, but guess what? We don't need the governor for a public hearing. I am happy to announce today that in fact we are going to hold a public hearing to which all of our congressional delegation will be invited to listen firsthand to the concerns of the people of New Hampshire about the role of money in politics. Thank you! Now, I don't want to say that just because we don't need the governor to pass a constitutional amendment in this country, that our job here in New Hampshire is done. Money is power, as you all know, and power corrupts. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Those in power will always seek to gain more power. So the only thing in history that has ever been able to overcome the power and the money that has controlled corrupt systems is the power of the people. That is how this country got started. And in fact, in New Hampshire, we have Article 10, the right to revolution. When all other effective means of redress are exhausted, we have a right to revolt and reform our system. So, having said that, we do have a amenable congressional delegation who has sent letters. I will be reading Senator Jean Shaheen's letter about this issue for today. So, dear friends, she starts, thank you for the invitation to join you for today's press conference and rally. Please know that I am with you in spirit as we celebrate the progress we've made in reversing Citizens United and putting political power back where it belongs, in the hands of the American people. Over the last several weeks, private equity firms on Wall Street have flooded our state with millions of dollars worth of ads designed to scare voters and prevent Congress from addressing surprise medical bills. Until this dark money campaign was exposed by news reporters, Granite Staters had no idea who was behind it. These corporate special interests are taking advantage of the Supreme Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United, which allows unlimited money to be spent while remaining anonymous. This massive influx of dark money into our political system undermines the confidence of the American people in our democratic system. It creates an environment ripe for corruption and inappropriate influence, and enables a belief among voters that their voices will be drowned out by corporations with bigger checkbooks. During my time in the Senate, I've supported numerous proposals to address this serious issue. I led an effort earlier this summer to introduce a Democracy for All constitutional amendment that would overturn Citizens United and keep big money out of politics. I also recently reintroduced the Disclose Act with Senator Hassan, which would address problems created by the Citizens United decision by improving disclosure requirements and preventing unlimited, unregulated corporate spending in our elections. We can go even further to strengthen confidence in our political system. We should support an end to hyper-partisan gerrymandering that protects entrenched incumbents and marginalizes many of the voters they represent. And we should oppose efforts to disenfranchise college students with arbitrary challenges to residency and unfounded allegations of fraud. Your presence here today and your work in this endeavor reinforces a core democratic principle so famously expressed by Abraham Lincoln, that we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Thank you to members of Open Democracy Action, American Promise, New Hampshire Voters, Restoring Democracy, and Fixing America for leading the local effort to restore integrity to our voting process. I wish you all the best as you continue this good work. Sincerely, Jean Shaheen. And now I would like to introduce my wonderful co-sponsor. Where did he go? Representative Joe Guthrie. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this Democracy in Action affair. So I have a little different pitch. I don't know how I can speak after that. She's covered almost every base there is. There aren't any bases left, but there is one. And I think it's that this is a bipartisan action. It's not a Democratic or Republican action. It's people. And I'm here to say I'm a Republican and I support the 28th Amendment. This is why. The influence of money buys causes politicians to make decisions and spend money that their constituents don't want. As a Republican, I want to keep taxes down, and we can't do that if special interests buy influence. Why should one company get a tax break when others do not? Often it's campaign dollars and large donations that make the difference. When state or federal contracts are given out, how can we be sure that the campaign donations aren't giving one company the inside track? We in New Hampshire tend to think that we're immune to the flood of big money. This is not the case. $132 million was spent on both sides of the 2016 U.S. Senate race. 95% of that money came from out of state. That doesn't seem as if that's comfortable to me. Unlimited money, especially money from outside New Hampshire, makes our election process unfair. It allows a candidate with the help of special interests to have an unfair advantage over an equally qualified candidate. Money can keep politicians in power for decades. It used to be that in New Hampshire that you could go to your friends, raise a little money, attend voter forums, and the decision would be made to elect you or not. Why is it that we now seem to need to spend millions of dollars to run a campaign in a state of only 1.4 million people? Well, this may happen more at the federal level than at New Hampshire. We should join with our fellow states in petitioning our federal government to say unlimited campaign donations will come with a price tag to our republic. The influence that money buys causes politicians to make decisions and spend money that their constituents don't want. I want to keep taxes down, but we can't do that with special interest groups by influence. Why should one group get a tax break when others do not? If we truly want a government that is responsive to the voters, we should be able to regulate money in politics. The 28th Amendment to our U.S. Constitution takes a step in that direction. Republicans and Democrats alike have a hard time saying that word. But we are together on this issue, and Republicans and Democrats alike should support this amendment. Again, I would like to say thank you for open democracy action. It is really a democracy in action issue, and I know that we're not done yet. That I should have brought the information that Corrine gave me, but get on the email, send those emails out to our leaders and legislators, and maybe we can get this thing off the ground. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming today. I'm Representative Kat McGee, and I have a bit of history with this issue, and I see a few of the founding members of this effort to overturn Citizens United, and also Buckley versus Vallejo in '76, which was the one that said that money equaled speech, which was a terrible decision, but we didn't stop it then. And then Citizens United said that corporations are people, and the two combined really opened the floodgates of what we have today. I met several of these folks, including Ellen Reed, on that journey. We were all coming up to the State House. We went to Russell Prescott's place of business when he was a member of the Senate and lobbied and got him to champion in the Senate the idea that this was a good thing and that New Hampshire should be on board with overturning the unlimited money in politics. And that's where that unanimous decision in the Senate came from, that go-round. There were several go-rounds, as Ellen chronicled, and many of the people here actually came to training that was done to try and help people figure out the best way, people who had never done it before, including myself and Ellen, to pass a warrant article. And our warrant article effort gave us support to go to our legislators after the fact and try and convince them that this really was us asking for something from them. It wasn't coming from out of state, as the governor's veto message said. His veto message actually used the language in his first line of exception to 504. He said that this is another national campaign designed to get at free speech. Well, he was half right. It is a national campaign, but it's because the majority of people in this country understand that you can't have free and fair elections if you are paying to corrupt them. And I think it's basic. So I'm honored today to read to you a letter from Congresswoman Custer, who's my Congresswoman. And I just wanted to acknowledge as well that activism doesn't stop. And it's important for everybody to remember that, because the first time Ellen and I met, neither one of us were in the legislature. And both of us grew to be here. She got here first, and I kept trying, and we're still trying. So, yeah, me too.
Thank you.
Okay, so statement from Congresswoman Annie Custer. Good afternoon, and thank you to everyone who is here today and for coming together to demand campaign finance reform. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but know that my thoughts are with you as you fight to strengthen our democracy. As Americans, we have a duty to raise our voices to ensure that the citizens, not the special interests, are the bedrock of our electoral system. Since elected to Congress, I have stood with you as a steadfast advocate for overturning Citizens United and addressing the issues campaign finance reform present. As we all know, the current campaign finance system is stacked against everyday Granite Staters. And far too often, we hear of dark money and shadowy special interests spending millions of dollars across the country, drowning out voices and small dollar donations of everyday Americans, and this must stop. Earlier this year, I was proud to join my colleagues in passing H.R. 1, the For the People Act, a sweeping government reform bill that would address the growing inequalities in our elections and campaign finance system. In the years since Citizens United, the floodgates have opened to political contributions from corporate influencers and private entities that seek to undermine our system of government. H.R. 1 would rein this undue influence and empower everyday Americans. Here in the Granite State, we have a long and proud history of political engagement. Gathering today to demand action on campaign finance reform is a critical step to addressing this issue in Concord and in Washington, D.C. This is not an easy task, and we know there will be well-funded opponents standing in our way. However, despite these challenges, I remain optimistic, as I know Granite Staters will not rest until our citizens are empowered, our elections are transparent, and our campaign finance system is reformed. Thank you for your commitment. I stand ready to work for you and with you for our future. Sincerely, Annie Custer.
Chris Pappas, Congressman of New Hampshire's 1st District, couldn't make it today. He extends his apologies. I'm reading a letter from him for this event. Dear friends, thank you for inviting me to the 28th rally and press conference. I regret that I cannot be there with you in person. Americans recognize that our political system unfairly favors special interests and big corporations. We know that we must take bold action to change business as usual in Washington and to ensure that our democracy truly works for the American people. In Congress, I always fight to limit the influence of big money in our politics, protect voting rights, and impose new ethics reform to help end the culture of corruption that still exists in Washington. I was proud to vote for the People Act of 2019 because it delivers on that promise. I believe that we need to overturn Citizens United because we cannot make progress on important issues like climate change, gun violence, or the cost of prescription drugs until the special interests are put in their place. Here in New Hampshire, we solve problems by respecting one another, listening to our neighbors, and working for the common good. The people of New Hampshire don't want more of the same broken system that favors the wealthy and well-connected. Please know that I will always fight for a political system in Washington that better reflects the Granite State way of doing business. I would like to thank all of you for being here and your tremendous work in ensuring that our democracy truly works for the people. I would also like to openly thank Open Democracy Action, American Promise, and Fix It America for organizing this event. It is truly an honor to serve as your member of Congress. Sincerely, Chris Pappas.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Beal. I am now Deputy Director of Open Democracy. But when I started this, I was a warrant article petitioner in my town of Antrim. And in 2015, when I did my petition warrant article, and for those of you who don't know, we have the ability to do, as Ellen said, to go into our town and get a warrant on our town warrant for town meeting. And at that time, in 2015, most typical voters didn't really understand Citizens United. But as the warrant article initiatives like Paul Revere's Ride have sounded the alarm to our New Hampshire fellow citizens about the dangers of big money politics. My petitioning took place at the town transfer station, as all good town business does, on 2 sunny but really cold Saturday afternoons. But I had conversations with my friends and my neighbors. My town is only about 2,800 people. I know most of them, and that's the way that New Hampshire conducts or should conduct its politics, is one-on-one, having conversations with people. When town meeting arrived in March 2016, the voters had been bombarded with television ads and unlimited numbers of mailers into their box, most of which was coming from outside money. They might not have known the details of Citizens United, but they saw the aftermath firsthand. They voted overwhelmingly to call for overturning Citizens United that night in Hampshire's 2016 town meeting. I thank the legislators for adopting HB 504, but I want to thank the citizens of New Hampshire who united against big money. They will always be more powerful than the so-called Citizens United. Thank you very much. And I'd like to call on one of my fellow warrant article petitioners, Pat Ediston, to come up, who did warrant articles for Amherst and Milford.
Hi, Heather. I had the idea that we should get citizens to sign petition, and I think we mostly use the standard language. And I started off in Amherst, which is where I live, and then I knew a lot of people in Milford, so I decided to expand over there. And it's a very interesting process because it's only the registered voters that are supposed to sign. So you'd always start off asking, are you a registered voter? And they'd say yes. And then you get their name to the town office and they'd say, oh, he's not a registered voter. So you had to keep getting more signatures to make up for the ones that didn't know they weren't registered. But we finally got it on the ballot in both towns. I got to speak first in Amherst, and then some of the citizens in Milford allowed me to speak at their meeting. And then we finally got to the vote, and I was frankly shocked, but we won in both towns. Amherst by 60%, and Milford about 72 or 73%. And you could knock down with a feather at that point. I mean, I was hoping we would, but hadn't allowed myself to believe we could. But that was it. A lot of door-to-door, a lot of talking to people, and you do some educating as you go.
Good afternoon, my name is Corinne Dodge. I am often asked how I became so passionate about civic activism by many people. And the truth is that up until 5 years ago, I had no interest whatsoever in political activism, other than to diligently vote every 4 years in the presidential election and occasionally in the gubernatorial and the Senate race. The thought of speaking out in a public setting was enough to set me over the edge. And yet here I am. Then the unspeakable shootings in Newtown, Connecticut changed all that for me. Certainly I thought legislators in Washington would finally do something to stop the carnage of mass shootings in our schools. Only they didn't. No legislation was passed to protect our children. It was then that I decided as a teacher and a mother that I could no longer remain silent. That was comfortable, but it wasn't good enough. I joined my first civic activist group, working with other New Hampshire mothers to try to get common sense gun safety legislation passed at our State House, realizing that an overwhelming percentage of New Hampshire citizens from both political parties wanted this legislation passed. I watched with naive amazement as bill after bill was voted down. Why, I asked. It's simple, and I finally figured it out. It just doesn't matter what laws working class citizens like myself and like all of you want passed. Legislators are not listening to us.
Instead, they are catering to billionaire and multinational corporate donors who want very different laws passed and who are currently being allowed by recent Supreme Court decisions to legally buy off our legislators. The obvious had finally become very clear to me. No legislation, not for good medical care, not for educational reform, not for clean air and water, not for gun safety reform, not for banking reform. No legislation to promote the common good will ever be passed until voters are first able to suppress the corrupting influence of excessive and secret money in politics. I decided to join a coalition of nonpartisan national and New Hampshire activist groups. You'll see them right here. Sorry. Oh, the wind is blowing, huh? Things are going to change. So anyway, the next thing, thank you. The next thing I knew, I was swept away by the enthusiasm of my fellow New Hampshire citizens. I suddenly found myself doing the unthinkable, speaking publicly before my Derry Town Council to request that they pass a resolution directing the New Hampshire legislators to call on our federal delegation in DC to pass an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This 28th Amendment would allow for the regulation of campaign funding and spending. Much to my surprise, and I have to add to the amazement of the Derry Town Council, the Derry Town Council voted unanimously to pass this resolution. I think they were more shocked than I was. 5.5 long years later, HB 504 was officially passed in June of 2019 by the New Hampshire legislation. And today, right here, we celebrate that call for a 28th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I am here now representing not only myself, but New Hampshire Voters Restoring Democracy. We are a passionate and grassroots groups partnering with American Promise over here, a national nonpartisan activist group. Today we are asking you to join us, all of you please, in a citizen's call to action by using our online link to contact your 3 persons by email and asking them to actively join with New Hampshire citizens in getting the Democracy for All Amendment passed and ratified. I meant to have one of those cards in my hand. I don't have it, but go afterwards and go get one, please, on the table over there. If you want to pass them around, that would be great. So stop by at our table and pick up the card with the online address. Help us reach our goal of 5,000 New Hampshire emails sent to our New Hampshire delegation in DC. After you have sent your 3 emails, please magnify your voice by passing the card on to a friend, a colleague, a family member, and by following us and sharing us on Facebook and Twitter. I want to overwhelm DC offices with these emails. They need to know that it's not just our Congress people behind me, but voters who want this to happen. Thank you. In spite of my fear of speaking, I was asked to read a letter from Senator Margaret Hassan. Dear friends, I regret that I could not be with you today, but join you in celebrating the New Hampshire General Court's call for a constitutional amendment to address the Backwoods Citizens United decision. All Americans deserve to know that their voices and their votes are equal to that of their fellow citizens. Unfortunately, in 2010, the Supreme Court's misguided Citizens United decision reshaped how our political system operates, tipping the scale in favor of corporate special interests by unleashing unlimited dark money in politics and overwhelming the voices of hardworking people. I have joined with my colleagues to introduce a constitutional amendment to overturn this disastrous decision. I am pleased to see bipartisan work on this issue at the state level. By passing bipartisan legislation calling for action to overturn Citizens United, our state legislature has made clear that people across New Hampshire support getting dark money out of politics. We still have more work to do and have to keep fighting at the grassroots level to reform our campaign finance system. Thank you to Open Democracy Action, American Promise, New Hampshire Voters Restoring Democracy, and Fix It America for hosting today's rally. I lost my place. I look forward to continuing to work with you and all of our partners at the state level to reduce the influence of money in politics and to give back power to the people. With every good wish, Maggie Hassan. And I suggest that we send her emails with that card and let her know we've got her back and we want it passed. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Azer Cole. I'm the state's manager for American Promise, which means I have the pretty simple job of getting 38 states ready to ratify this amendment and having Congress, 2/3 supermajorities, both the House and the Senate, send that language out to the states. And when I was first told by Mr. Ben Gubitz right over here about a year ago that I was going to be coming up with him to Concord to meet some great fired up folks in New Hampshire, I didn't know that I'd meet Olivia and Corrine and Jim and Liz and Representative Reed and Representative Guthrie and Senator Levesque. But it's been just an honor and a fun, victorious honor to be a part of. And you know, now as we're trying to use this victory in New Hampshire of HB 504, when I'm in meetings with Democrats and Republicans in places like Ohio and Pennsylvania, places we're actively working to introduce this piece of legislation, we're able to reference back to New Hampshire, say, look at what we just did, we know this is possible, and it's just a beautiful snowball effect of one victory fueling others. This is really a national project, but it's made up of local ones, and that's part of the beauty of a town warrant article leading up to a bill through the state legislature like this, leading up to votes in Congress. And this year, next month, in October in Washington, D.C., American Promise is proud to host the National Citizen Leadership Conference, where folks from across the country, from New Hampshire and Pennsylvania and Maine and California and all over, are going to be together learning for 2 days throughout the conference. Members of Congress will be there speaking in support. And then most importantly, having a citizen lobby day where we're going to march, people from across the country celebrating what you all have done here in New Hampshire and delivering copies of HB 504 to the entire congressional delegation. And again, using this victory as a way to kickstart momentum in other states that aren't so quick to be out in front leading on this issue. So I hope folks consider coming. We've got information at that table over there. And I'm not going to talk for very much longer other than to just say it's an honor to be sandwiched in between Corrine Dodge, who preceded me, and to introduce our next speaker, State Senator Melanie Levesque, who I had the honor of working with, in particular when this bill made its way into the Senate as the chair of the Election Law Committee. She really saw this through, helped us navigate the politics within the committee, and ensured us that this was, in fact, going to pass, and we just had to trust the process. And it was not always so easy, but she saw it through, and thank you, Senator Levesque. It's my honor to introduce you here.
Woo!
Thank you, everyone. I really would like to thank Open Democracy, Fix It America, American Promise, New Hampshire Voters Restoring Democracy, and all of our advocates that help make this real. It's because of you that we're here, and because of the people, we the people of New Hampshire. So as the chair of election law, it was my responsibility to shepherd HB 504 through the legislative process in the Senate. It had passed the House with a bipartisan vote, and I want to thank Representative Reed for shepherding that, for sponsoring that bill. And then it passed the Senate on party lines. The goal of HB 504 was to send a message to our congressional delegation that we, the people, want our government back. We want money out of politics and fair districts that represent the people. This issue is personal for me. In 2010, my town of Brookline proposed a warrant article to reverse Citizens United and get money out of politics. Unfortunately, we were not successful. The arguments were in favor of the voice of corporations being as strong as the voice of our people. Those that spoke against the article were not concerned over the unintended consequences of the people, but the unintended consequences to corporations. But in 2012, we tried again and we succeeded. We countered negative debate with positive, reasoned arguments. Corporations should not have the same rights as our citizens, and approximately 82 New Hampshire towns agreed. The practices such as dark money in politics and gerrymandering of districts lead to a government that does not work. The influence of money in politics often biases our legislators' views to the point that they no longer work for the betterment of their people. When the government does not work for people, people lose trust in our government. My dear friend Karine talks about the link between money in politics and the opioid crisis we face. To her, this crisis is personal, as it took the life of her grandson. When we give corporations like Purdue and others a voice that is equal to our own, we will lose every time. If legislators were more concerned about the effects on their constituents rather than the support they receive from the corporations' deep pockets, these rooted issues such as the opioid crisis, the mental health crisis, our energy policy, our environmental policy, would be problems that we could solve. It is time to get the dark money out of politics. The governor vetoed this bill because of a concern that it is a national effort. Well, yes, it is a national effort, and people all over this country, from New Hampshire to Nevada, have seen not only that our government is broken, but many of our legislators won't work to fix it. Therefore, we the people need to facilitate this change. The governor says it's not the legislature's role to do the congressional delegation's job. But this is a democracy, and it's a representative government. Our constituents express their needs and concerns at our local town halls with warrant articles, at hearings in Concord, at rallies such as this. And it is our job as legislators to listen and act on our constituents' concerns, whether it be passing laws or passing on concerns to our federal delegation. That is how democracy works. We are making great strides with this issue. At one point, we couldn't even have this bill heard in the legislature. Yet this year, the New Hampshire House and Senate recognized the importance of this issue and passed HB 504. Our congressional delegation has acknowledged that this is an important issue and that we, the people, are speaking up and saying loud and clear, we want money out of politics, we want fair districts. So, let's take this win and continue to work locally, statewide, and nationally until we overturn Citizens United, end gerrymandering, and get back to a government that is of, by, and for the people. I would like to introduce Olivia Zink, who has been so instrumental in helping us work to get money out of politics.
So there's three things left to do. The first thing is to pick up one of these pens and sign with your name and your town on the copy of House Bill 504. We're going to take those copies to DC at the American Promise Conference in October and deliver them in person to members of congressional delegations. So please make sure to put your name and your town on those. The second thing is, as we finish, we're going to have chili in our office. So there's chili and a beautiful cake awaiting us at 4 Park Street on the 3rd floor. So please walk over to our office. It's that Patriot Building and on the 3rd floor. And then if you haven't had a chance to sign in, we'd just like you to do that. But I want to thank all of you for the tremendous effort that you've put in. And we know this fight doesn't end today with this victory, but we will keep fighting until a 28th Amendment is ratified. Thank you.
As you all are signing the language of HB 504, which we hope will become the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution, I would like to read what you are signing.
Good.
It's very short, it's very simple, and I think you all will like it. Section 1, Congress and state legislatures shall regulate the role of money in elections and governance to ensure transparency, prevent corruption, and protect against the buying of access to or influence over representatives. No such regulation shall be deemed in violation of freedom of speech rights in the Constitution of the United States of America or its amendments. Section 2, legislative districts or district intends shall not intentionally or unduly favor or disfavor any political party. Within 12 months of ratification, all federal and state district lines shall be redrawn to conform hereto. There it is. Sign
Thank you. You bet. You bet. Absolutely. Absolutely. Name and town.